Hi there, and welcome to the Alt.Narrative podcast. I'm your empathetic and relentlessly curious host, Rich Harris. I've been a corporate marketer and sociology nerd for most of my 2 decades long career, observing trends and patterns in human behavior on the internet. On this podcast, we will explore the impact of the digital world on humanity and modern day social dynamics. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to check out the website at Alt.Narrative.com for more content. Hey everybody, this is Rich Harris of the Alt.Narrative podcast. We're here to talk about the impact of digital on human behavior, whether it's personal or in the workplace. And this is actually our kickoff episode right now, which I'm pretty stoked on. And I have my first guest. His name is Braedon Leslie, and he comes from the company Leon. And I'll let him kind of expand a little bit on what they do. But the way that I came about meeting Braedon was we were on LinkedIn. I had posted an article that came out. Iceland was the company that did the largest test case for the 4-day work week. And I thought that was really fascinating. And for many of us in Silicon Valley who have been worked to the bone, this was also fascinating for other reasons, especially work-life balance and just being able to feel human while also pushing your career. So that post on LinkedIn drummed up some conversation, and out of nowhere, Braedon kind of commented about the use of AI to help kind of further the cause of work-life balance, feeling better about going to work and performing, at your best, as well as being able to take a little bit of a break because you are an organic human being that needs things like rest, mental downtime, and those things. So anyway, without further ado, I'll let Braedon go ahead and introduce himself and talk a little bit about his company, Leon.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate, again, the opportunity to be on your show. I'm flattered that I'm your first guest of all people out there I'm sure you've connected with. But yeah, so I work at Leon. I'm the chief intern. I gave that title to myself, which is a kind of an internal joke we have. But I started out as an intern at the company, and we just let the title stick. So, but yeah, Leon is essentially a company that's focused and hell-bent on equipping managers with the tools, the insights they need to help take better care of their people. That's really the 411 on what Leon is. It's helping managers better manage their people, and not just the OKRs and the KPIs and the rev cycle, all these other things, but actually help manage the happiness, the health, and the resilience of their people at the same time. And you mentioned pursuing career performance without burning out. Like, those two things shouldn't have to contradict one another, right? You should be able to pursue a career, excel, improve yourself while also feeling healthy and recharged throughout that. Like, stress is a given, I get that. But the background of Leon is actually our founder, Brian Smith, is an ex-sports scientist, right? He worked with USA Track and Field, Olympic athletes from all over the world. And those people don't go a day without measuring their athlete's ability to perform. And if an athlete is stressed to a certain degree, they're not going to throw on extra 10 pounds to try and PR them. They're going to take a step back, and how can we actually help this person recover? And massage may be good for someone, or taking a nap might be better for someone else. Like, we are so unique and so physiologically different in a lot of ways as humans that we need kind of this very specific way to recover. And so bringing that philosophy of managing someone's wellness in real time and then adjusting workloads accordingly is what we're bringing to the table for managers, so that they can better manage the health and resilience of their people without burning them out and leading to turnover and increased health costs, etc.
Yeah, that is great to hear. And you guys are definitely doing the Lord's work there. Speaking of somebody who kind of, my career grew up, if you will, in Silicon Valley. So in Bay Area, California, a lot of the companies, I was working at a startup across the street from Google's first office when they were first blown up. And, having been in the Valley for so long and having a horrible commute that has only gotten worse. It took a little bit of a break during the pandemic, but we'll get to that topic here in a second. I just remember being so fried all the time. Like your commute was almost like the first leg of your day, and then you had your actual work day. And then you had the third leg of the day, which was being tormented by the traffic going home, where what should have been a 15-minute drive was like an hour and a half sometimes, just for no reason, no accidents or anything. And so factoring all that in, we have life outside of the work that also we have to handle and figure it out as well. And one of the things that I found in Silicon Valley, this is probably true in a lot of other industries, is that you have kind of these old schoolers at the top, of a lot of these older companies. And in tech, a 30-year-old tech company is like 90 human years, so they've been around forever. They have a really old school mentality about stuff. And they didn't really, the whole idea of like caring about how their employees were feeling, whether physically or emotionally, mental health was looked at as like a, hey, you just need to toughen up and all this other bullshit. And now all those people are paying the price for that, and the good news is that, companies like Leon and just the younger generations, one thing I'm excited about as a Gen Xer is like the millennials and the Gen Zs are coming out with all these great ideas, and they're actually caring about how people feel, not just in their daily life, but at work and their careers and stuff like that. So I would love to hear more about, who are some of your biggest clients or test cases, and what was their situation before they got started with Leon, and then maybe what happened after they started working with you guys in your platform.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, and I agree wholeheartedly with you. I'm like right there on the line between millennial and Gen Z. And so growing up, there has been this, more intentful focus on feeling well about work, about life, and managing that work-life balance. And I think we're still figuring out what that should look like and how we can exist in a productive world while still being happy and healthy, right? And it's interesting, but Leon has had a lot of success, and a lot of what we do is founded on a lot of the scientific principles that our founder Brian is pulling from the world of sport, and that a lot of HR research has done a really fabulous work on actually how daily surveys is really just as effective of a way of managing someone's again fitness and ability to perform as like a wristwatch that manages your heart rate variability, right? You can get very similar and comparable data through daily surveys. And that's really what we're offering at Leon. That's how we keep an ear to the ground, so to speak, with our clients. That's how the managers keep an eye on their people and really day to day manage the fitness and health of their people versus old school HR. Let's do a semi-annual, maybe a quarterly survey. But the time those responses are fielded, if any, right? I mean, I don't know what the engagement, it's really not never that high.
They never feel. I've participated in so many of those surveys over the last couple of decades at the tech companies I've worked at, and it definitely is like a checkbox that leadership has to send out. That's typically how it has felt to employees, where they're like, oh, we got to send out this survey and pretend that we give a shit about how everybody feels or whatever. But, after we get that, it always felt like as an employee, that data would just like go out into the ether while we continue to slave so that people at the C-level suite can continue to like increase their stock price. And like that feels very degrading and very demeaning after a while when you are busting your ass for a company and your team and you're trying to do the best thing you can and you're still getting kicked around, So anyhow.
No, I agree. And I mean, if you think about that, while they're trying to fill the data, from those survey responses, and then once they finally pull it all together, not only is it weeks, maybe even months after the fact, after your initial responses, but then it's another month until they actually maybe do something about 1% of those things. It's all too little, too late. And the ethos, just the intention behind it just is not there. It's that checkbox that you mentioned. And so I mean, one of the huge factors that Leon brings to the table is just like the fact that we're really showing people that day to day we care about you, and we're creating this philosophy around managing KPIs, managing what we do as an organization day to day. It's a just as you and I are living and breathing, so should be the goals and the tasks at hand, right? Just handing people a huge stack of papers and saying, get it done, that's not really managing in light of people's needs. And so we're moving towards that, and Leon's really helped really set the pace and break ground for what that should look like, and that's what we're excited about. Right now, we had a previous iteration of the company where we offered some survey engagement, but Mason, it was mainly offering some perks local to where the company started, and providing those resources to managers and companies. But now we are really focusing on this data-driven portion. We're working through beta, and we'll be launching officially this fall. At which time we hope to be able to aggregate and really start presenting the data and findings that we are collecting day to day right now.
Got it. And then, do you have certain partners or companies that publicly you're already working with that you've started to kind of do some beta testing with and seeing what the result has been, even if it's like a smaller use case?
Sure. To quote me off the top of my head, I probably don't know like what results. Really, it's beta groups. We're testing functionality, um, but we have in the past, been able to validate the efficacy of like implementing that 4-day work week, and that when done methodically, not just haphazardly, it
Mm-hmm.
really can drive the type of benefits from a recovery point of view that people need and a leader should consider, right? I think it's awesome that we're seeing this move towards mental health resources, days off, whether that's a week, whether that's one Friday a month, whatever it looks like. It's awesome and it's good. And I'm in a vacuum, it works perfectly. But if we actually want to take it to the next level and really get the most out of every initiative that we launch within a company, it should also be done in light of where people are actually at, right? Maybe for your sales team, the day off it couldn't come sooner. But for the marketing team, maybe they could go another week. Maybe they could handle more work. And from a revenue point of view, you think as a leader, they're like, oh, that's awesome. I can actually stress my people. Like I can give them more to do. I can drive more revenue, create, maybe this is the time for us to launch that new product or, whatever it is, right? So I think thinking like that should really pique leaders' interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
To
Yeah.
one, avoid costs, but also two, to maximize revenue without burning people out. I think is just a fascinating way of thinking about management.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is in the corporate environment, especially in tech, I've noticed this. So, marketing people and creative people in the tech universe, right? Like a tech company will start as an engineer's idea or something, and then they're like, oh shit, okay, we got to build this thing. So they get some engineers and they build a thing. And they're like, oh crap, we got to sell it. So they get some salespeople in there. So most of these companies are founded on a combination of engineers and sales guys. There's no like when I say creative, I don't mean you can't be creative as an engineer, but I mean like a graphic designer or a video guy or somebody that does audio design, and that kind of thing. Those aren't usually the people that start tech companies. And so the challenge for tech people is, or for our creatives, I'm sorry, the challenge for creatives in the tech world is that our job is to make people feel things so that it returns an action out of them, and to try to explain an abstract, emotion based marketing campaign that you would like to do to somebody who's all about like top line sales and checking boxes and crossing T's and dotting I's. It's so hard to go to them with like an emotional concept and say, yeah, I need $50,000 to do this video so we can run this campaign. They're looking at you like you're insane. But they don't have any problem going out somewhere and blowing, $6,000 on drinks at a trade show because they're a sales guy and everybody knows that $6,000 in drinks might turn into a $2 million deal. So they don't get criticized much for that behavior. But the creatives are like, nobody's here to help kind of advocate for the way we think, the way we process our work environment, the way we deal with requests. We don't operate like sales guys. We operate like artists. And so there has to be a compromise in there, but it's not very often that middle managers and large companies and even VP levels even really care about any of that. They have this like secured position up at that level, but they're not really paying attention to the health of the organization because they're comfortable, and so they don't want anybody rocking the boat or that kind of thing. The challenge, though, or the downside, is that I've seen so many awesome, talented people that are creative who just were not understood and treated as such leave and go somewhere else where they were actually taken care of. And I feel like a platform like Leon can kind of help fix those issues where like not every employee is treated the same. I have 3 boys, I have 3 sons. All of them are completely different people. Like I have some general rules as a parent, like, pick up your shit, but outside of that, I have to treat each one of my children very differently. And in the work environment, it's the same thing. So, first of all, having leadership being open to a platform like Leon and taking an actual interest in their employees' lives and how they need to function at their best at work. I read about Leon a little bit and kind of about the idea of the playbook and developing different playbooks for the different kind of personas in the workplace, if you will. I don't know if I'm describing that correctly, but maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, and you know what, Rich, Leon just really helps management put their best foot forward, right? And it also shows people that okay, they care about us. I now feel like there's a space for me, maybe as a creative, to talk about what my needs are, right? I there not only will Leon facilitate those kinds of conversations, through playbooks, which are basically activities and strategies that are recommended based off the data that we're gathering. So, like for us as a UK use case as a company, we saw, you can imagine as a startup, there's a lot of moving parts. It can be very ambiguous. We're trying to build, create, and rework these products all the time as we prepare to go to market, as we engage with our beta users. It's a highly stressful, highly ambiguous workplace, and it's startup. So there's a lot of extra hours and late nights, right, that have to
Hats,
go
you guys
in.
are all wearing a million hats all the time.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you can imagine that that is stressful, right? I think Leon really practices what it preaches. And so, what we were seeing as a company from our own data was that people were resilient. We were gritty, right? Those are some of the tracks or things that we measure: resilience, grit, adaptability, health, and burnout. Our team was appearing to be healthy. We were resilient and gritty. We were committed, but there was a clear lack of alignment. Alignment was scoring lower than any other metric that we were gathering from our team. And it was just like you step back and you don't even need playbooks recommended to know that, okay, I need to do something about this. I have to talk. I have to
Mm-hmm.
clarify. Is role clarity, uh, is it there? Are people just, is there a missing link between where we're headed and what we're currently building? And I think those are actually two really common things that lead to burnout for people, is just a general disconnectedness between where the company's heading and what I feel like I'm doing day to day.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who's done creative and graduated in communications, I've done marketing, creative work. It's super ambiguous and exhausting to come up with these campaigns and these ideas. And if I feel like I don't know what I'm doing or I don't have a real clear vision, I'm just, it's exhausting, right? And that's aside from just general tasks that need to get completed, right? But yeah, the playbooks and strategies and activities are just basically, they're coming from professionals. Eric Corum, we recently did a webinar with him, renowned high performance coach. He's worked at he's worked at university level, professional level. He's received all the accolades and merits you could imagine. We're getting playbooks from his caliber of people, people in the field of high performance and elite sport, mental health, mindfulness, all these places we're gathering and pulling playbooks, as well as thought leaders in terms of organizational management, how to actually facilitate things within a company to promote communication, alignment, diversity, equity, and inclusion. All these things, we're not only are we gathering, but we're providing resources for companies to implement when it's the right time. I think that's a huge part of this. Is it's not just throwing things at managers and saying, okay, like good luck.
You have more
Uh,
shit to do. Yeah, totally.
be a better manager. It's like we're just making it easier for everybody. We're helping everyone feel heard, and then we're providing just the things that a manager needs to address his people's his or her people's health and wellness. It's not more than he or she needs. It's just exactly what you need, right? Whether it's to grow your company or to help them recover. It's making it really easy for leaders and managers, whoever it is.
Hmm. And then, so when, I guess two questions here. So I'm going to pivot a little bit because we're not all sick of that word right now. So yeah, the pandemic. As you guys have been working on this, how long have you been kind of developing this platform and this kind of idea?
So the idea of Leon has been around for several years. Like I mentioned, we had a previous iteration that was working. We had scaled, and we had about 100, over 100,000, 120,000, users on the platform. And then we pivoted and really we're upgrading, right? It's an upgrade, so to speak. So, and that has really taken in full swing over the last probably 12 months.
Okay, cool. And so now that you guys have kind of come that far, uh, the pandemic has brought a whole different type of challenges when it comes to employees, whether it's onboarding, management. Burnout has looked completely different. Now people are not getting burnout from their commute anymore. They're not getting burnout kind of in the like I can't physically be at all these places at the same time anymore. The new version of burnout, which we're all familiar with now, is kind of the Zoom burnout. Where and also because we're at home, kind of intertwining our lives, with our daily lives with actual work, because a lot of us have to be in the house or whatever, had to, until recently. Um, it's definitely changed what was burning people out. People started working more hours just because it was easy to just be right there at your computer. Yeah, say it's 5 or 6 p.m. You stopped work and you start making dinner, but then you hear, a Slack message like pop up and you go check that out. You're like, oh, all it takes is for me to go send that person a link to this document real quick. And then somebody's like, oh, hey, you're still on right now. Hey, can you real quick, blah, blah, blah. So my wife works in the corporate world at a gigantic tech company that all of us are familiar with, but I won't mention it. But like she's experienced it. A lot of her coworkers have, and fortunately, that company she works for, they take that stuff really seriously, and so they do have a lot of phone calls and meetings to just talk about. Are they okay? Here's some resources. Here's ways that you can manage your workload and some rules and boundaries you can set for yourself in the workplace, to kind of even that stuff out a little bit. And fortunately, their leadership and their management is super on board with that. So that makes a huge difference. But coming for where I come from in tech, that is not a common thing to sit around and know that once a week you have a half hour where you're going to sit around and just talk about your mental health. Like that just sounds crazy to a lot of these old companies that I've been employed by in the past. And so I'm happy for her. But as far as you guys and the development of Leon and the further work that you're doing to kind of prepare to eventually, go big with this in the world and a lot of these larger corporations, how has some of the data that has come in, and some of the patterns that you're seeing because of the pandemic and kind of what the nature of work looks like, how has that influenced, some of your goals with the platform?
No, great question. And speaking firsthand for myself, I experienced what it was like to move to remote, and there was just this never feeling detached from work, and it was stressful, and I worked more than I should, but I didn't realize it. I just wasn't picking up on it. Burnout is sneaky like that. It'll come up from behind you before you even realize it. And so I love to work. So like I'll work late nights and
Hmm.
whatever it is. And so it was really hard for me specifically um, to manage my day better, right?
Hmm.
To create flexibility. And when you are working from home, it's just a new environment. Like environmental stimulus is a real thing. Like getting used to just the day to day, how I do things, people coming in, people coming out. I'm more flexible now. People think you can just go do errands that you weren't doing before because you work from home. And it's not always like that, or at least your brain doesn't think it's like that yet. So it's really interesting. But I think all the trends we've been seeing have really validated Leon and what we want to accomplish. I mean, work from home, hybrid, in the office, whatever it is, Leon is flexible in that way where it doesn't matter where you're at. And actually, like if we have people working from home, Leon is the perfect use case, right? It takes that workload off the manager's back and lets people communicate their needs, their health, their wellness, without that manager needing to prod so much,
Mm.
right? And then when it's right, when the time is right, Leon will suggest to that manager, hey, looks like alignment's trending down. How about you have a conversation? Here's this activity. Here's this strategy you could implement. Or hey, looks like people are burning out. Give them a day off. That could be a good strategy, right? And we talked about, over time, the vision for Leon is to one, aggregate all of these uh, vetted best practices, right? But then use data and AI to understand when is it best to implement them, right? Based off these signals and this sentiment, when should we implement that strategy or activity? And that's really the beauty and magic that kind of goes on in behind the scenes with Leon. But I think moving forward, I'm really optimistic about where Leon's headed. I think there's no barriers that I see, and we have different initiatives that we're hopeful to start working on post go to market and release of the platform, that will just continue to really build on what we've already established and bring more value to the platform. So I think we're excited. I think pandemic uh, with the pivot we made, it just worked out. Like it was just good timing.
Hmm. Yeah, you're definitely. I mean, the time is ripe for what you guys are doing right now. Seriously, I do think that, and maybe this is just 46-year-old me who's jaded from the larger old school companies, but I'm sure you guys will sometimes run into situations where you're pitching the idea, the platform and stuff like that, but your barriers to entry to a new company are going to be old mindsets, and so um, the situation I've run into many times, and I do believe this is really changing for the better right now, and this is why it's a great time for you guys. But there are situations where people, again, they're kind of black and white, and they just shut it all down because they're comfortable right now. And if you come in and bring this initiative in there, you're bringing accountability not just to the employees, but you're bringing accountability to all the layers of management all the way up to the top, to the C levels, and you're forcing them to change their game and actually make important what may have not had to be important for them before. And so I think the combination of the younger generations being more finicky about where they work and what's involved and what that looks like, which is a huge positive, mixed with you guys bringing the data and the reporting to kind of prove your point, and then also spell it out in a way that shows them there's actually an ROI attached to this for your company that could not just save you money and attrition and all that nonsense, but also make you more money because people will not mind working harder and for longer hours when it's time to work, because all these other little pieces of their world at work are being nurtured and taken care of.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you bring up a really important point that there's going to be the big four, the management consulting firms, the big investment banking companies. They're old school and they're so big. They're just these Leviathan companies that get to do whatever they want. And the best talent out there is always going to go crawling to them,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because it's where the clout and the money is, right? And that's just how it is. That's the world we live on. These companies are just going to be able to get away with that. Maybe not forever. Hopefully not forever. But like you said, there's so many different moving pieces going on right now with mental health, mindfulness, just physical fitness and well-being has gained so much momentum. People are thinking more about their health and wellness than they ever have, right? They're thinking more about, and this isn't just millennials and Gen Z. I just think it's really spreading and gaining that momentum that everyone just wants to work at a place that, has benefits for them and cares about them and respects work-life balance. And so generally speaking, there is so much momentum going on that it's just like it's like the perfect storm, for Leon, with what we're trying to accomplish, who we're trying to complement, and how we're trying to support organizations moving forward by creating a newer, better type of management philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it means letting HR stay in its lane, worry about talent acquisition and billing and PTO and some of these other things, and let managers, the people who live and breathe and are on the front lines with their people day to day, actually, who have that relational currency with their people, allow them to, speak for and act on behalf of their people, right? And their needs. And I just think it's like, you know, there's probably voices out there who are on the same page as us, and I know there are. But it's those old schoolers, and it's that old school philosophy that we're really trying to poke at and jab and change. So we're really optimistic about where we're headed.
Yeah, I think your platform and just the overall approach and mindset is, let's level the playing field between IQ and EQ. That has been such a huge issue for so long, and I'm so happy again that you guys are out there again, doing the Lord's work, actually tending to the herd and the flock and the people and how they feel and stuff like that. And I think companies and their cultures are going to really benefit from that in the future, especially all the younger generations coming up. I have two boys in their mid 20s that are like neck deep in trying to get their careers started and stuff, and it is not an easy world to do that in right now. So the fact that you guys are focusing on that stuff, I think is really key, and I'm pretty happy to hear it. So let's go ahead and wrap it up for today. So I just wanted to say thank you to Braedon Leslie for coming here and representing Leon and having this conversation, the Alt.Narrative podcast. And Braedon, thanks again, man. I appreciate you coming out. Is there anything you can maybe say just to let everybody know where they can find you guys online?
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't already come across our stuff on LinkedIn, we've got some, my coworkers are great, and Brian, our founder, is great about putting out content and sparking conversation about these topics. But otherwise, you can find us at our website. We've got access to all our resources, media production, everything is there at myleon, Leon.co, myleon.co. That's probably the best place to find us, our blogs, our resources, and to be able to dive deeper into what we're all about. So,
All right, cool. Thanks again, man.
yep, thank you. I appreciate it.